Today, we are talking about siblings, and we have some very special guests with us because we can't speak for them. Meet Ethan and Rosalie, and this is the Refrigerator Moms podcast. This episode is titled, Oh Brother, Oh Sister, Siblings versus Neurodivergence.
So, Kelley, something we used to do is go up to the city and have some like food adventures. We're kind of foodies and we like to go try out new restaurants.
Yes.
And one time we took you guys up there for one of our food adventures. And we went to we went to this bakery that was amazing. And do you guys have any memory of that?
Yeah, I remember that exact pizza place. I remember the pizza.
Pizza Ragazza.
Yeah.
We looked it up. It's now closed. It's
Oh.
R.I.P. Ragazza.
But it was a good time.
It was really good.
And it was just as much fun for us because it was a time we could be with you guys and just have fun and forget about autism for a minute.
Yeah.
Do you remember it?
Bakery.
You remember the bakery?
I remember the
Very
bread.
long line.
The very long line. And do you remember that we were sitting in the car, it was raining, and we couldn't wait, so we were eating the cookies in the car,
I do remember that.
snorting powdered sugar.
Yes, it was delicious.
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
Those are very important memories because being the sibling of an autistic child is not an easy lot in life, is it?
Not particularly.
So one thing, so we've written a paper. You guys have read it. People listening can go to our website, refrigeratormoms.com, and read about it because there's been a lot of research done on the effects of siblings who live with someone on the spectrum. And you can go there, listeners can go there to get the details. But one of the things that we talk about is this glass child syndrome that can occur. And glass child syndrome, I'm reading from the paper, the definition of it is, it's a colloquial term used to describe the sibling of a high needs child. And the sibling may feel invisible or overlooked as parents focus attention on the high needs child and therefore neglect the sibling as a result. And this is especially common in families with one child who has a disability or neurodivergence. So does that resonate with you guys? What did you feel like a glass child at any point?
I never felt like a glass child. I never felt invisible. I definitely recognized that your attention was split and probably a little heavier with my brother. But, and I think a lot of that I kind of took myself kind of out of the eye line just to kind of take some pressure off because I knew it was a lot. But I also knew that you guys were trying very hard to make sure that like you spent time with me and that I got plenty of attention. So I don't think I felt like a glass child, no.
A little bit of an invisibility cloak.
Maybe a little bit.
What about you, Rosalie?
I think I definitely have like the emotional consequences of being a glass child that I've like come to realize as an adult. Like when I was a kid, if you asked me that, I'd probably be like, no, like I feel very seen and stuff. But then I like look at how I act in certain situations in my adult life, and the way I behave is very much mirroring what you would expect from like someone who is the glass child.
Interesting. Like, can you give me an example?
Yeah, like I can definitely like suppress what I want to do if I think it'll make other people happy. Like if I'm going out with my friends and they're like, we all want to do this and I don't want to do that, also go along with it, you know? And like that happens in many situations for me.
Yeah. Well, it is some estimates, 71% of the siblings of a neurodivergent child experience depression, anxiety, stress in their childhood trauma. So this is an important topic. It's a topic that comes up a lot in Facebook groups and throughout social media. And you are doing well by telling other parents what worked and what did not work for you.
So that 71%, did that surprise you when you read that was, that huge majority of kids are feeling that as a result?
I think you were there when I read that part of the paper, and I was just like, I feel so validated.
It was a little bit of a leading question. I know that was the one thing you jumped up and you're like,
that was me.
Wow. Yeah. It's like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it does not surprise me.
Yeah.
No. And I think I was aware as a parent that this was going to have an effect. I mean, how could you not?
Right.
You know, like it was having an effect on me, you know, for sure. So of course it's going to have an effect on you. And I'm not being defensive in any way. I mean, I think that it's just like I tried to protect you, but I think there's just no way. And we've talked about this, Ethan, that you know, my way of kind of trying to protect you is kind of to separate you, you know, and like when your brother was having, you know, a lot of tantrums and things like that, like, you know, telling you to go to your room and just like you wouldn't have to be part of those tantrums and see and hear, even though inevitably, of course, you would see and hear those things. And I couldn't protect you from all of that. I think that's what parents struggle with siblings, is like, how do I minimize that or try to mitigate that, knowing that it's impossible to keep you in a bubble from it. I mean, we're all in these houses together.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, do you want to talk a little bit about the anxiety that you felt? I mean, I know that there was definitely periods of time that it was, you know, higher. Maybe it was always high. I don't know. Like, what do you...
I mean, yeah, I definitely had the anxiety really until summer 2023. Yeah, I'm like, what kind of, you know, how it manifested? Like,
Yeah.
well, I mean, there was like in fourth grade, that was like when the PTSD, that was when like that was at its peak. For that, I always felt like I was gonna go pee my pants.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
how anxiety manifested, like at least for that year. And then like up until like I really got a hold on it a couple years ago. It was just whenever I was in the room with my brother, like my heart rate would go up. And I would just be really anxious. I'd be looking for ways out of the conversation. I would just be trying to get out as fast as I possibly could. Like one word answers, like it was just very avoidant.
Yeah. So back to the fourth grade thing and the PTSD, you know, I remember, yeah, like I was looking for a physical explanation for those things. I really was hoping for one. You know, we took you to for every test about that. Like, and unfortunately, I get a sinking feeling that I knew it was anxiety produced. And I'm like, okay. And that's when I think that's the first time I started taking you to a therapist. And we took you to a couple different therapists for that. And I don't know if you remember that you were on medication for a little bit for anxiety, which you went off of after about a year or so. But yeah, that's when I'm just like, okay, that the household like had calmed down a little bit because his brother had been very physical and verbally abusive. And then when he started to kind of calm down a bit, everyone in the house kind of had okay, we'd been in this fight or flight mode for so long, and then we all started to relax a little bit, but then the anxiety peaked, and that's what really happened for you. But, you know, what happened in 23 that kind of helped you?
That was when, that's when I went back to therapy. I mean, like when I found out it was PTSD, I think I was a senior in high school. And I went back to therapy then just because I felt like that was what you and dad wanted me to do. Because I felt a lot of pressure to like have a better relationship with my brother. And so I definitely wasn't, I mean, it was EMDR, which didn't help me. I'm more of a talk therapy kind of guy. So that wasn't helpful for me, but I just did it to check a box. And then I think 2023 was when I was really ready to go back, and that was talk therapy, and that helped a lot. And what helped was realizing that he was like a different person now. And I mean, we had just grown up so separately that we really didn't have much of a relationship. And so the biggest thing that helped in lowering the anxiety was you and dad taking a step back, because like what my therapist helped me realize is like he and I have our own relationship, and that's something that like, and I'm also like very big on like authenticity. And so like when he got his driver's license, like dad texted me like right after, and he was like, make sure you like text him congratulations. And I'm like, well, now it's not authentic. And it's like, you're just telling me to do it. And so I built up some resentment towards you guys and him because I felt like you guys were on his side and all the pressure was on me to like rebuild this relationship that wasn't my fault for like creating.
Mm.
And so you guys stepping back and just letting me work through it on my own is, I think, I mean, he and I have a better relationship now than we ever have, like in DC, like going to lunch and like spending like a 45-minute period of time together where we can talk the whole time is like unheard of
Yeah,
5 years ago.
That's amazing.
I know.
So, Ethan, you mentioned that you stopped therapy at the fourth grade, you said?
So after fourth grade that was when I stopped like the specific therapy about like the manifestations of anxiety from the PTSD. And then I also stopped again in high school, like probably halfway through my senior year after I tried EMDR for a few months.
And so you feel like you had to be ready for the therapy, because one of the things that we recommend in the paper is we recommend trying different therapies with siblings throughout their life and seeing if something sticks. So it's okay to stop and start. Just keep going back to the table and what intervention might work for you. Sort of the idea that we put in the paper. Would you say that's true?
Yeah. I mean, when I started going to EMDR, that was when I felt like the pressure from my parents was the highest to like rebuild their relationship with my brother. And so I really did it to get them off my back.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't for me necessarily.
Yeah.
It was like that was my way of showing them that I was trying without actually having to really try.
I understand. So, Rosalie, you touched on the glass child syndrome and how you felt about glass child syndrome. And I know that you didn't have any therapy other than therapies that we did and interventions that we did with your brother that you were looped into. So, some of the therapists that worked with him worked on skills for you to help you interact with him a little bit more. But you didn't actually start therapy until you were much older. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so sort of like similar to Ethan's experience, at one point, when I did start therapy, right after I got diagnosed with depression, I was like 19 or 20. So I was in college and I was like away from home. And part of that resentment definitely was like, why did I not start therapy before? Like, why did my diagnosis like take so long for me to like get? And that was definitely related to being the glass child because I was suppressing my own emotions. So like you weren't seeing that I was showing symptoms of depression when I was younger.
Right. I guess the overall advice to parents and kids is that even if the sibling of an autistic child needs therapy, they may not be ready for it, to keep the conversation open and to keep trying it. And if it doesn't stick, or if you feel like you're doing it for the wrong reasons, you can stop and start again. Try a different therapy, a different therapist. Just because you need it doesn't mean you're ready for it, kind of a thing. I think that's a theme with all therapy, really.
When they were a lot younger, there were like sib shops and things like that, like group therapy where you could meet other kids with siblings who were on the spectrum. Did you ever do those, Rosalie? Did you ever participate in those?
No.
A little bit you did in some of, but it was in some of his therapies. They would have siblings stay, or they would have an attempt for you to have a support group. I think that those kind of things are important. I guess the question comes back to you guys. Would you rather go to a sibling support group, or would you rather have the food adventure? What sticks out more? Or are they both important? Should you do it all?
I think for me as a kid, I would have just preferred like one-on-one talk therapy where like the therapist just sort of got to know the situation, and like I think I just needed guidance into, you're suppressing your emotions a little bit. Let's unpack that. I think that would have like helped me a lot.
Okay.
Growing up.
Yeah, I know I offered those sib shops and things like that, like kind of groups. I don't know if you remember that, and you like kind of shut that down. Like you were not interested in doing that. I know we did a few things, like we did like the special needs skate and some other kinds of activities where there were, siblings along with, the kids on the spectrum. But I don't know if you necessarily interacted with the siblings in those situations. I mean, was that I mean, clearly that wasn't something that you were necessarily seeking. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because now, like, a lot of my closest friends and a lot of like people like I am close with, they have siblings who are like neurodivergent, but it was just kind of like a natural gravitation. And it's
Interesting.
not something we talk about a lot or if at all. And I think like what I kind of needed as a kid was to not think about all that stuff. And that's what I appreciated about like being in my own school and
Yes.
like having friends that were separate is I didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
That's
We
interesting.
had you both, and you went to a different school than your brother, and you went to a different school than your brother. And I that is in the paper. We talk about the importance of having some independence and some time away from the family dynamic.
And not being known as, that person's sibling, and having a separate identity from, because it's so overwhelming.
Yeah.
But something you said, Ethan, to kind of build off of, I think that's one of the reasons like we became friends is
Definitely.
that and maybe this isn't the same situation, but for us, we could talk about shoes and food and all that stuff, but we knew what each other was going through as moms. So we had that built in, like, yeah, what my life is, but it's a relief to just be able to talk about other stuff, but with that knowledge that, yeah, I might be going through it and you might be going through it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's what you talk about, kind of gravitating toward those people. We didn't necessarily, well, we did gravitate toward each other, but I don't know if that's the same.
Well, it's not like I found out that they had a sibling that was neurodivergent and
Yeah.
like wanted to become friends with them. It was
Yeah.
like something I found out later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's more just like the effect that has on.
On the way you approach people, your empathy, your conversational skills, probably.
Yeah.
So, did you talk to friends growing up about your family dynamic and what you were going through, or do you want to not talk about it when you were away from your family?
I think I had some really close, good friends who I felt very comfortable like talking about it with, and that definitely helped me in my situation, and just sort of like feeling more normal about it. But I tried to like limit those conversations to people who I knew would be supportive and who would understand. Like that wasn't just something I was readily sharing with like kids I met at school.
Got it. So you can go to refrigeratormoms.com to read the full paper and see our complete list of questions. What would we do's, to-do lists? But we are going to start right now with some questions for both of you. The first one, what do siblings want as they grow up into adults? What do you want everyone to know?
I think the biggest thing for me was independence. I like needed space to like find out who I was outside of like the house. I remember in particular, like I started working out and you guys thought about like maybe he wanted to work out too, and you were like maybe you should try this gym, and I was like absolutely not. Like I like got very anxious, and it like felt like almost invasive. So like I needed separate spaces and like to have outlets that were just mine. Yeah, I just needed like going to a different school. I think was the biggest thing for me. It just let me develop who I was without having to worry about anything.
What about you, Rosalie?
I think you did a great job with that specifically. Like we had meal times, just me, you, and dad, and I like had those moments where I was the only child. But I think something that was missing was the therapy element, like trying different therapy for me, like alone would have been
The secret
helpful.
sauce.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so that's what you wanted as kids. What about now? What do you want as adults?
I think a lot of that is just validation. Like even like when I was in high school and I felt all that pressure, that's I guess where I felt like a glass child is I felt like you guys had made the choice to keep us separate, and then once like the effects of that were that we weren't very close, you put a bunch of pressure on me to rebuild that, and I felt like I wasn't being acknowledged for what I had been through and the space I needed to figure that out on my own.
What about you, Rosalie?
Yeah, definitely similar. Just like validating my journey and like recognizing points where things could have been different. But also for me, for my healing journey, one of the biggest things was sort of realizing that like there wasn't there was never a way to fully protect me from all of it. Like I was gonna have some emotional impact from this regardless, no matter what you did or what you guys tried to like put me in.
Right.
There was always gonna be like some emotional suppression or like those sort of symptoms. And the biggest part of like me not feeling resentful anymore was just realizing that my parents are people. This is like their first time raising a neurodivergent kid.
Right.
And like, of course they were going to make mistakes. Like,
Right.
I'm going to make mistakes raising my kids. Like, that's bound to happen.
Right.
So I think just like you recognizing me, but then me also recognizing your struggles with it, like,
And what I did get right.
completed the puzzle for me.
Got it.
Yeah.
And what are the effects now? Now that you're a young adult and you have perspective, the perspective of being able to look back a little bit because you're not in it as much. Certainly, you're not around your siblings every day. What have the effects been on you? Good and bad.
I definitely find that I'm really good at like reading people emotionally or like just their behavior in general. And that definitely comes from like you openly communicating with me about Bo's acting this way. This is why. Or you just like responding to him in like an appropriate way. I definitely learned a lot from that. I definitely have like a strong sense of like responsibility. Like I can do it by myself type of person, which like is a two-edged sword because I'm also like terrible at asking for help and sort of emotionally suppressive, but I'm also like really like able to like care for myself and like very responsible and like also resilient, like emotionally resilient. Like I went through this bout with depression, but I was able to get through that like mostly by myself. Like a lot of that healing was because I was strong enough to do that, and that wouldn't have happened if I didn't like exist in that situation with Bo.
Would you say that, but and this question is for both of you, would you say that you're both empathetic in a quicker way or more empathetic? Or it seems to me that's what radiates off of me when I interact with both of you is you seem to have a more nuanced and mature empathy than I would say other adults, young adults. Would you say that's true?
I think 100%, especially like we're both pretty young still, and I feel like a lot of our peers are still emotionally developing, and I feel like I definitely got there sooner.
Would you say that's true, Ethan?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think like it's a kind of empathy where like when you've been through something and like you see someone who's maybe not super mature, like the first thing you think is like, why are they acting that way?
Right.
And it's like, oh, they probably went through something too and probably didn't have, well, for the record, I'd like to say I think you and Dad did a great job.
Oh, thank you.
I think you made the right choices. But like I think like when I meet those people, it's like, oh, maybe they went through something too, but they didn't have the same support system that I had, and it like went a different way. So it's less like, oh, like why are you acting that way, and more like, oh, like something probably happened.
Obviously, you're always going to have these siblings. You know, and it's not the journey hasn't ended.
Right.
So
Right.
it's not like it's all over. Are there things that you are still grappling with now? I mean, I know, and maybe that goes back to, you know, feeling like a glass child, or like, do you still feel like a glass child? If so, like, what do you need to become visible?
I think for me, it's just like analyzing situations, like I had mentioned earlier, where I am being emotionally suppressive or I'm like bending to what other people want to do to be easy, like sort of breaking out of what I learned how to do growing up and like fully like realizing and like strongly supporting myself.
And what would you say your relationship with your sibling is like right now? I mean, you know, I would say you had a similar dynamic than Ethan did with his sibling. I don't know. Your brother just seemed to kind of ignore you for most of your childhood, would you say?
Yeah, we definitely had a period where we just didn't interact much at all. And then, like, when I got to college, he missed me and he started calling me. And that's sort of when we started having, like, a positive spin on our relationship, which was new.
Yeah. Yeah. And you feel like it's it is sort of a budding new relationship. It's going to be different than any other relationship, but
Yeah. I think for Bo too, treatment was a big thing.
yes.
Like him being able to just communicate better with everyone helped him communicate better with me.
I agreed. I would agree.
And like, I can hug my brother now. That's super cool.
Yeah.
Like, that was not a thing I could do before.
Oh my God, we have a picture. My Facebook profile picture is a picture of the two of you. Is he let you take a selfie because we have so many issues from childhood where he did not ever wanted his picture taken, and we had severe meltdowns over trying to get a family photo, and I kept trying because I wanted a family picture of my two kids. And then one day we were at dinner just recently, and you're like, come on, Bo, take a picture, and you guys have this picture that you sent me, and it will be my Facebook profile picture forever.
Forever.
As we
There'll
have
probably be more photos.
Well, I hope so, but it is a symbol of how hard we have all worked, including Bo, to get to be able to take a picture together.
Yeah.
It's just pure joy. So the treatment that you mentioned, Rosalie, is MeRT. Our family member Bo did MeRT, magnetic e-resonance therapy, and it made a big difference in all of our lives.
And this episode of Refrigerator Moms is brought to you by Brain Performance Technologies. Brain Performance Technologies is a specialty mental health clinic that offers magnetic e-resonance therapy, or MeRT, for autistic people aged 3 or older. MeRT is a transcranial magnetic stimulation protocol that utilizes an EEG diagnostic to deliver personalized magnetic pulses to stimulate the brain and build neural pathways effective in managing autistic symptoms.
So, Ethan, we're coming back to you and the effects of your family dynamic growing up and glass child syndrome, and whether or not you still feel glass child syndrome.
So I don't feel glass child syndrome with my parents, but I do. The effects are definitely still there in other relationships. I think that growing up with my brother, a big issue I had was like he wouldn't be responsive to when I would like not want to do something, and so I would kind of suppress what I wanted to say. And so I think I'm a really good communicator. My problem is I'm scared to like, I guess what Rosalie was talking about earlier. I'm scared to actually like say how I'm feeling because I'm worried that the other person isn't going to take it right. So that's why like when I was in high school, I went to therapy instead of just like saying I'm not ready because I didn't think my parents would understand. But now I think there is a deeper understanding between at least me and my parents about how I feel, but I do still like have the effects of sometimes struggling to communicate exactly how I'm feeling.
And I feel like you did definitely learn how to communicate effectively with us, and really, it was a hard conversation for you to have with us, I think, of coming to us and saying, you need to kind of stay out of my relationship with, your brother. And that was really, it was hard to hear because, my biggest fear and my, a big sadness for me was seeing that you and your brother weren't close. And I think I was really afraid that you would be estranged. Unfortunately, because I was driven to try to push you guys together and mediate and try to get you guys closer, it actually had the opposite effect. And you were able to communicate with that to me. And, it was definitely hard. Like I still, even today, my inclination is to ask you about your relationship with your brother, and I, kind of bite my tongue, or because I don't want to. Now I'm overcorrecting, and that's on me. Like I need to figure that out. Like I feel like if you mention him, I want to say, oh well, did you have lunch with him, or did you what did you guys talk about? And I have to not say that, but my first instinct is to try to fix it or try to and instead I was actually damaging it more. And I I know I still have work to do. And I even did it just this week with you and the dog, that I try to interfere in and try to get you guys closer together.
The
And-
dog and Ethan, you guys?
Yes. So this
Is the
week,
dog autistic?
no, the dog is not. But Ethan complained that he said that the dog seemed a little entitled. And I didn't like that. And so I said, hey, you need to make up with your
see.
furry brother and tell him that you love him.
Oh, I
And what did you say, Ethan?
I said that the fact that you were asking me to do that, I felt like you were taking his side. I felt a little resentful towards you. I felt a little resentful towards the dog.
And it's not McGruff's fault. And I was
But
actually
he's entitled.
Well, that might be my fault. but I backed off, and I think you and McGruff are back on track. But I need
But
to
you
learn.
can't ask about it.
I can't ask about it. I
right.
can't say anything. I just have to, look at them and see them together and be happy and all that stuff from a distance. But yes, it was, I really appreciate that, even though it was hard for me to hear, that you felt comfortable enough to come to me and say that. And I don't know if you thought that, I was going to react badly to that information or what, but I'm glad that whether or not you did feel that you were able to do it. So I appreciated that, even though it was hard to hear.
Again, this paper, Oh Brother, Oh Sister, Siblings versus Neurodivergence, can be found at refrigeratormoms.com. And we wanted to touch on socioeconomic factors that might impact families and their ability to implement some of the suggestions in the paper. That is addressed as well. So find the paper on our website, refrigeratormoms.com.
We both have 2 kids, and obviously there's lots of different permutations of families with multiple children on the spectrum or with other neurodivergence.
Yes.
So we, of course, are just speaking about our
2 children.
2 children and our setup, but there's also lots of information about, what to do when you have more than one child that you are trying to navigate around. So that's all there on refrigeratormoms.com. So typically in the What Would We Do section in our podcast, we would, we pose questions to ourselves and then tell you what we would do in those situations. But obviously we can't do that for this episode. So we're turning it over to you guys and asking you what you would do in these certain scenarios. So the first question we have for you guys is, what would you do differently if you were the parents of both neurodivergent and neurotypical kids?
I think the biggest thing would just be acknowledging the trade-offs. I think you and Dad had a hard time accepting that the way you raised us was going to have the effects it did in us not being close.
Yeah.
And so I think it was the right way to raise us, but then I think once we got to adulthood, you were kind of like, well, why aren't they like close? And like they need to be that close too. Like they need to be siblings as well. And so I think taking a step back and actually realizing that there are trade-offs to what you do with your kids is important.
I think for me, I would just have liked to be put in therapy or like psychiatry or something like a lot earlier on. And I also think like along with that, maybe like some more just questions about how I was feeling or like specifically directed questions about like symptoms that I might have been showing for like glass child syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been like helpful for me to sort of understand how I was feeling better.
Yeah, communication.
Yeah.
Communication, just because as a child you communicated well didn't mean you were communicating deeply, and that was missed. And I mean, we're still working on that, right?
Yeah.
It's part of why you're here is so that we can, keep talking and talk in ways that maybe we glossed over earlier. So
Yeah.
And what would you do the same?
I think, again, like the independence, I think the separate lives, I guess, was super important for me to figure out who I was. And I think that you guys did a good job of being there for me and like doing things. Like I know we every summer, since he didn't like to travel, like one of you would take me like somewhere in the US and we would like have a vacation, just the two of us. So I wasn't missing out on things that like families with all neurotypical kids were doing. I was getting those experiences and I wasn't feeling left out.
Dad and I loved doing that. And it was always like, I was always excited when it was my turn. We would trade off, every other summer.
Very
And
good.
we would ask Ethan, where he wanted to go. And it could be, anywhere. I guess pretty much anywhere in the United States. I don't know what we,
Oregon, South Dakota, and Colorado.
yeah, I got to go to South Dakota with you. That was so much fun. We had a good time.
What would anything the same for you, Rosie?
Yeah, super similar. Like going to a different school, having different meal time.
That was my favorite time of the day.
Yeah.
We fed him separately, and we just had the three of us could just talk like normal people.
Yeah. And also, like, we would also do vacations and stuff together, just
Definitely.
individually. But I think also vacations individually with my other family members. Like, I would go on vacation with my cousins without Bo, and that was also really great for our bonding and like for me to feel more normal.
Yeah, it's you definitely look at things differently. Like you can't think traditional family dynamics.
Absolutely not.
And we really had to let that go.
Yeah.
That's like our family is not going to look like other families, like our summer vacations, our holidays.
And
all those
the
things.
letting that go, it's not just, you don't just let it go once and then you keep, like, I still have to remind myself, do not try to take a picture. And of course, the second I let it go, Rosalie snags a picture. But so it's like you're constantly evolving and remembering to let it go.
It's difficult. I mean, it goes back to, me trying to, push you guys together. It's just like, oh, well, brothers, you guys should, pose together and do this. And, it is hard. I think, we're always struggling with that different dynamic and sort of.
Everybody has a family dynamic that they're constantly managing, but
absolutely
that's ours. Okay, so looking back, when your needs were in direct competition with the neurodivergent siblings' needs, what do you suggest for prioritization?
I was always the type of kid, and I think you had mentioned something like this too, where I just sort of recognized the situation. Like I would remove myself without you asking or expecting that of me. I just did that because I recognized that that's what you needed from me. And I think that's okay, but then that leads to these sort of like suppression, right?
So remember to come back to communication later.
Right. Like
debrief later.
I know Bo's having his moment right now, but then come talk to me after and make sure I'm okay, or like see how I was feeling about that.
Yeah. I would concur that is a smart thing to. Again, it comes back to communication,
Yeah.
even if it's delayed, because that's all you can do in that moment. And we've already touched on this, but as adults, if you aren't close, you have to let it go and let the relationship unfold as any sibling relationship should unfold, right?
Yeah.
That's the way it goes.
I know. And but that relationship, I mean, I know that was, I mentioned before, the kind of driving force is I didn't want you guys to be estranged or anything like that. And, part of that is, I mean, we have a little bit of a different situation. We haven't talked about it too much, but, your brother, lives independently and, and is working. Your sibling, isn't. He's got a little more higher needs. What about that? Like, as adults, do you feel any sort of responsibility? I know that can often feel like a burden or, something in the future. Like, what do you see in terms of an adult, like looking out for your sibling? I mean, do you feel any pressure?
I definitely don't feel like pressure from you guys to like have a relationship with him, but I like my relationship with him and like that I think the reason I appreciate our relationship so much now is because I didn't get a good relationship when I was a child. So when he started being cool with me, I was like, "That's awesome! Like I'm gonna call you all the time." But I think also part of it for me is just like giving myself space when I need it to. Like if I'm on the phone with Bo and like he's like not getting out of a loop, like it's okay for me to get off the phone. Like it's not my responsibility to talk him out of that loop.
Yeah, absolutely. And this comes up quite a bit. There is going to be issues of its care as you get older. I mean, I'm not going to live forever. Your father's not going to live forever, and we are trying to set up, care for him that it's not so onerous for you as you get older. You don't want to be in a situation where you're raising your own family and your brother has to come and live with you, right? So we're going to do everything in our power. Do you feel weight from that, or what can we do? What can other parents do to help you make peace with that, maybe that reality, keep you involved in the conversation?
I mean, I've always sort of imagined like my future involving my brother. Like I've always imagined like I'll have a house and Bo will have a side house on my property and we'll live together but separate. And I've just always sort of like envisioned my life like that. And that's like something that I wouldn't choose a partner who wouldn't be on board with that 100% because like that's my family.
Interesting.
Yeah. And do you, Ethan, I know the situation's a little different, but do you ever now like see any kind of responsibility toward your brother?
I mean, I think that at this point, like if I don't reach out to him, I don't really expect that he's going to reach out to me. So I do feel like some level of like it is on me to kind of keep it going, especially since we're in the same city. But I don't feel pressure.
Yeah.
And it's not the same anxiety inducer that it was like a few years ago.
Yeah.
Like seeing him every few months for lunch is not that bad.
Okay, so we are at the part of the paper where we have a to-do list and things that we should do immediately, things that we should do in the short term, things that we should do over the long term, and things that we should never do. We call them blocked. So we thought we would tell you what we've written, and you can give us a affirmative or negative. In the immediate, it's you both have the same experience. We're separating meal times to the extent possible. You, I know, your brother had noodle time, and then that allowed you to have meal time with your.
Do you remember
mom and
noodle
dad.
time?
Yeah, so at 4 p.m.
4:30. Yes,
Yep.
he had noodle time, and it was kind of a win-win because he got his own meal time, and then we got to have a pretty typical family experience of debrief on the day.
Yeah, I strongly advise that for any family. So modeling grace under pressure, a lot of times it comes up where you're in public and there's a meltdown, and how I'm acting, it can affect how my other child is responding to their siblings' meltdown. It's just to the extent possible, try to keep your cool, breathe through it. Remember that you don't really need anybody else's input or approval. Just be there for your children.
Yeah. And like on that, I think remember I was mentioning the positive emotional impacts. That is like a huge piece of that. I don't feel like I need to prove myself to anyone or like act a certain way because I didn't have to feel like that in those situations with Bo. Like if he was acting out in a restaurant, our like idea of that was, well, screw those people. Like they're not cool.
Right.
If you can't pick up on what's going on here, then I don't want to be friends with you. Like I don't want you in my life. So like that confidence in even if my brother's acting weird, like we're still a cool family, and like if you don't get that, you don't get that. That like was a really positive thing.
Well, we might have had to buy a few rounds of drinks for people at the next table, but that was okay. That was okay.
I don't know if I was as good to you about modeling indifference, and I don't know if I cared about what people thought. I don't think in those moments of big tantrums, and again, you can go back to our paper on tantrums.
Well, definitely.
I've got a lot of good stories about some epic tantrums. I don't know if I was modeling indifference. I mean, do you remember how I acted in public? Did that inform how you responded?
I don't remember really any of that, but like I will say, it's not exactly the same, but I think you and Dad, the way you guys handled things was definitely like a model for me. I think you guys were always a team, and I think that's pretty rare for parents of neurodivergent kids. I think isn't the divorce rate pretty high? Like,
It's about 85%.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that. And
So-
that's definitely something we're going to
gonna be
talk
talking
about
about-
in the
yep.
future.
And the dads are going to come and sit where you two are
Yeah.
sitting right now.
But yeah, well, I'm glad you noticed that.
Because it doesn't just happen.
yeah.
So that's good.
I think you and Dad, like your relationship is definitely a model for how parents should be and like how a partnership should be. So I think that was a good thing.
Oh, that's nice.
Makes me want to cry.
Oh, and in the short term, the one-on-one activities, we talked about mealtime, but separate vacations or
Separate schools.
Separate schools.
That's a separate to do, but yeah.
and the gym, karate, the martial arts, and food adventures, and setting up the expectation that there's a time when the neurodivergent child's needs take a back seat, where they are fine with a caregiver, and you go off and have some time alone. It's important.
Yeah.
This one, carve out a space in your home. You had your own room growing up, and you had your own room growing up. And again, we talk about socioeconomic factors, and that might not always be possible. It doesn't have to be fancy. Even if it's just a special corner, even if it's
A little tent.
a tent, and they have those cute little tents you can
I'm not
buy.
saying a tent in the backyard where your kid has to go. I mean, like, one of
Yeah,
those little play tents.
that you put over the bed, those little canopies
Yeah.
that you put over the bed, or you loft the bed and you can have space under the bed. This something that signifies you can go here and tune out chaos.
Yeah.
I think that is important.
I know, Ethan, you have a big love of your own space. I think that was a key part. And, again, like, I think that was what you were talking about the choice we made. I think we definitely, had that safe space for you to go to, but I and that's what separated you. So, for good and bad, and again, knowing the consequences and, sometimes not acknowledging those trade-offs, I knew that separate space, and that separation, there is that trade-off that you won't be as close, so, but I think that was the right choice. I knew that there was going to be a consequence. That didn't surprise me. I was hoping it wouldn't happen, but that was wishful thinking. But having that own space, I think, was really important.
And let's see, ongoing information. I mean, I never felt the need to protect you from your brother's diagnosis and make it something we didn't talk about. I mean, we kind of had no choice. We had to talk about it. But you needed that information.
Yeah.
You needed to understand. You needed some tools. You needed to know how to respond, in the moment of a meltdown, every bit as much as I did. And communication. And there obviously could have been more communication, but you still keep going in that vein as best as you can and keep trying to make improvements every year, right?
We definitely weren't a family that, hid his brother's diagnosis.
Yeah.
We were always talking about it. Do you ever remember a time where you didn't know he had autism?
No, I mean, like you say it all the time. Like I grew up in a waiting room.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You definitely grew up in a waiting room.
Yes.
Ethan was 2 months old when his brother was diagnosed. So he literally, I took him, in a carrier to, waiting rooms, and
Same with Rosalie.
he knew all the therapists and,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lifestyle.
Yeah. Well, I used to have Auntie Emmy and Uncle Tim come and pick you up and take you for donuts so that you wouldn't have to be in the waiting room as long. You'd love that.
I actually have really fond memories of going into some of those therapies with him.
Yeah.
I liked being with the therapist and playing with him, and I think it had a positive impact on how I viewed him and his diagnosis.
Well,
And your ability to communicate. Yeah, I that is in the paper as well as one of the suggestions is ask the therapist for help with the sibling. Don't be shy about carving out some time in the speech or ABA session for siblings to participate.
And Rosalie, I don't know if you remember this, but one of the things that parents with kids on the spectrum do is we're constantly shopping for play dates, and so like as soon as you talk to a therapist, you're like, well, are there siblings of the other kids that you work with that can play with my kid? And we would do kind of like sibling swaps and play dates and things like that. And I know you came over and helped, Ethan's brother, and we did some baking and some other stuff. Ethan's brother went through a big cake decorating phase.
I remember.
So we were always looking for opportunities to build in some social skills along with preferred interests. And so I know totally remember you coming over and we did some baking.
I remember that too.
Yeah.
It was like the first time I ever played with like fondant. I was like,
oh yes. We were pretty good with the fondant.
Yeah.
Gum paste flowers, all those things. But I mean, Ethan, you were also a playmate for some kids on the spectrum, other kids. Do you remember that? A blocked memory.
Blocks. Speaking of blocked, so these are the things that we put. Do not micromanage your child's relationship with each other. We've touched on that. We've beaten that one. We know. This next one is hard, and it's a work in process, but I think we are modeling it right now. Do not get defensive as the sibling voices frustration or, saying what, as a parent, I have done wrong. That is something you need to be able to speak freely. You need to be able to communicate with us, and some of it's going to hurt, right?
Yeah, it is, but we can take it, and we want to hear it.
Yes, and it will improve the family dynamic if you feel heard.
Yeah.
So do not make you feel guilty for saying what you need to say.
Anything you want to say?
Anything else in closing?
No, I think that's good.
All right.
So why does this conversation matter?
Because siblings matter.
And, for every paper that we write before we do a podcast, we come up with a thesis, like, why is this conversation important? And for this episode, that so what? So why does this matter is because as a parent, the goal is to teach children how to communicate effectively and to build trust that you will listen and act appropriately on what the child shares. And, as a child, their efforts to communicate may present as tantrums, like we discussed on our other podcast on tantrums and in our paper, Out of Control, Tantrums, Meltdowns, and Panic Attacks. But really that boils down to, without strong communication and active efforts to pay attention to non-disabled children, glass child syndrome may develop in a family unit or, in the worst case, family estrangement. So that's why we really wanted to invite you guys on to have this conversation, demonstrating that strong communication.
So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Refrigerator Moms. We have a free download that includes the full list of practical to-dos we shared in this episode on our website.
Our refrigerator paper, our version of a white paper, includes additional what would we do's and background information on everything we talked about today. Find it on our website, refrigeratormoms.com, where you can also sign up for our newsletter.
We'd love to hear your questions. Send them in along with future podcast topics by connecting with us on your favorite social media.
Thanks for listening. Please note that the information provided in this podcast is for informational purposes only, and it is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. The opinions and views expressed in this podcast are solely those of the hosts and guests. Any recommendations or suggestions made are based on personal experiences and beliefs and should not be taken as definitive advice. It's important to consult with appropriate professionals for personalized guidance. A full list of citations and sources for this episode can be found in our refrigerator paper available on our website.